Hello, welcome to Pulp Herb Reads Things. I'm Herb, and this is the weekly review for Monday, August 4th, 2025. You might wonder, if you watch my kickoff video, how someone who says they're probably the slowest reader on BookTube is going to have a weekly update. Well, my secret is something I mentioned called Bradbury reading. I'll have a video on that coming out this Friday. But the shortest version is read one poem, one essay, and one story a day. Generally, I read a short story or a shorter novella. But if you can read a short novel in a day and want to do that, if you take up Bradbury reading, I don't see a reason why you can't. So I will have, if I have a consistent week, 21 poems, 21 essays, and 21 stories to choose from to talk about. I can also talk about the novel I am reading or finished that week. In this case, we'll have one of each. So let's get on to the reading. Most of the poetry I read the first 4 days last week were from Christina Rossetti. If you're not familiar, she was one of the first of the pre-Raphaelites to see any kind of success. She's best known for her poem, The Goblin Market. But before it was published in the 1860s in her first commercial collection, she had a privately published collection of religious poems. And I had been reading those for quite a while. I'm about halfway through it. But with Garb August, I stopped to see if I could find a book of trashy poetry. It seemed odd to mix in religious poetry, which is, as I said, the first private collection of hers was. And I found a collection called Sex and Other Kinds of Poems by Rob Godfrey. Now, according to the introduction, several years earlier, he had written an entire collection of 69 poems, of course, called Sex, and they were never published. This collection has some of the sex poems and other things. Nothing I've read in the first 3 days was that sex-oriented, so I doubt I've hit those yet. But they do seem to fit the idea of Garb August a little better, so I changed that. Essays, I'm still mostly reading from a book called Reading in Bed by Brian Doyle. And these are mostly short. This is one reason I picked them. I tend to have two collections going, one of longer essays and one of shorter, depending on how time crunched the day gets, I can get my reading in. And in fact, I did have two poems not from this collection, two essays not from this collection. One was from a Philip Lepat collection I've been reading called Howl on Me, about the poem Howl and how it affected him, his relationship to poetry and him at school when he first read it. He doesn't give an exact date, but from other clues, I think either in the late 50s or 60 or 61 at the latest. Going back to the Brian Doyle essays, they're very short. They're all about reading, and they're quite fun. The highlights of this week were reading the refrigerator and on the habit of reading. The habit of reading was Sunday nights. And it's just a funny little discussion into how he, and I suspect a lot of you, I certainly can relate to this, can't follow grand plans very well most of the time. He'll read a book on a topic which will lead him to a related book, which will lead him to a related book, and he'll go off on a 9 or 10 book excursion that started with Chinese mythology, moves to Indian, to Egyptian, then Nile, head of the Nile discovery. These are not his examples of this kind of thing. And it was very fun. Reading the Refrigerator is just about that. But he had some pretty interesting insights into how that provides a timeline and a history of the household and the community and country it lives in. I really recommend that book. It and everything else that I can link to in some form will be down in the description. For Amazon, there will be affiliate links, but I've tried to find non-affiliate links or free links as well. The other interesting essay this week was from neither of those sources. It was from Substack. In general, I don't count my web reading as one of my essays unless it's something that really stands out and it gives you that view of a world you wouldn't see into, or a way to look at the world you do see into a little differently. And in that category this week, I read an essay called Fly Me to the Roof by J. Daniel Sawyer on his Substack, Unfolding the World. Dan is an author, a podcaster. He has made audio dramas, although I do not believe he is currently doing so. But right now, he is primarily a homesteader. And this is an essay about realizing you need to get a roof in place, and you've got to be able to do it with stuff on your property and the two other people you can wrangle, neither of whom have much upper body strength, while you are afraid of heights. And it's discussion of his solution, how he came up with it, and how he made it. And I think it's invaluable to have examples of this kind of thinking. So I really recommend that. As I said, there will be a link. I'm pretty sure this particular story is not behind a paywall. Finally, we'll get to the stories from this week. The first three were from the Best American Mystery and Suspense of 2022. Any kind of genre I think I might write in one day. I try to keep abreast of current short stories. Current defined as the past 10 years. And the Best of the Year anthologies, while I have my complaints about them, are some of the best. The three I read at the beginning of this week, none of them were what I would call very exciting, but they were all a good read. The next 2 days, I read two very old tales from old issues of Astounding Stories on archive.org. Monsters from Mars by Edmund Hamilton and The Wall of Death by Victor Rousseau. And the reason I found these is for upcoming anthologies, Raconteur Press has a post for prospective authors of homework to give you an idea of the style of stories they're looking. All their anthologies are themed. The first ones were all Tales of Malta because the founder of the press grew up there, but they have had Pen Up Noir has been a multiple series. They have had cat-oriented stories, family-oriented stories, a lot of different military types, not necessarily military war, but they have one that was a collection of stories of the E5 Mafia or the E4 Mafia, depending on which service and which branch you were in. And those are quite good. In fact, I would recommend all readers who like short fiction check out Raconteur Press. But these two are for their prospective writers of their upcoming anthology. It Came from the Pulps. It's to be an anthology of monster stories. If you are a writer, or even if you're just interested in seeing the stories they want to influence, or that influence what they're looking for, the link to the editor Deja's post with homework will be there. And then finally, I finished off with the Dancing Poppets, Will You Come? And here she comes from last year's Garbology anthology. The first one was from the Weird Menace section. The other two are from the adult section. The adult ones were okay, but I was really disappointed with the level of adult I got. I expected something a little more erotica, but they were still fun stories. But the Dancing Poppets for Weird Menace, that is the creepiest story I've read in quite a while. It is really good. It's by M. Dye, and I will be looking to see if he or she has any other published stories, because I really like to read them. Finally, I did finish a novel last week. I've been reading for quite a while a novel called The Dog Walker. I found it from another YouTube account, and I'll include a link to the video where it was discussed. The account is The Nonsense Free Editor. I did not watch it because I'm a writer. I ran across it because it was one of those videos in the big Why Don't Men Read thing that started earlier this year. And she talked about what she thinks is the reason most modern fiction doesn't appeal to them, and suggested this book, which had just come out, The Dog Walker, which is about a late 20s sailor in the Royal Canadian Navy and his adventures trying to get laid and buy a new duvet cover. I know that sounds ridiculous, but the duvet cover and its need to be replaced is in the first chapter all the way through to either the last or the next to the last. And it's a funny counterpoint to our hero's adventures with women. If you've not learned much about the game and the pickup artist thing, you'll read a lot about that because the main character is trying and usually failing to run game. And to be honest, he's not very successful, and some of the times he's not very likable. He's not dislikable. He's got some hang-ups that he does get over at the end. I was a little surprised at which of the many women mentioned was the reason he, or was the one where he got over his issues. Each chapter is named after a different character. Most of them are women in the story. A handful of the chapters. One is named after him. One is named after a buddy his on the ship. So it's an interesting read. In recommending it, though, I will admit some of it's about sailors getting laid. So some of it's a little raw. It did not bother me. I was a sailor in my 20s, and it rang true, if a little sanitized to me, especially the abuse they give each other over their sexual and other misadventures. It was good, and perhaps the difference is not he sanitized what he went through, but the difference between a surface ship in the Royal Canadian Navy and a submarine in the U.S. Navy, because submariners are rough people. We really are. So I made sure I finished that by Thursday. I actually finished on Wednesday. I was aiming to finish it by Thursday so I could kick off Garb August, as I said in the last video, quite well. And I started with the Tower. I am 3/4 of the way through, which I'm happy with. I had wanted to finish it in 5 days since there were 2 books for this week. I was hoping to finish each in 5. It looks like I'll finish the first in 4 because I'll probably finish it tonight after getting this video up and doing my other reading. And it's actually not bad of a book. There is some depth to some of the characters, despite it having the cast of thousands kind of thing going on. It is definitely that classic 70s trashy novel with adultery and bribery, and that was my washing machine telling me towels are done. Sorry about that. All that was set up. I was 5 chapters on. I had a ton of characters and intrigue between them. But it's taking some stuff very seriously. So far, the thing that has impressed me the most is this fire that appears to be ready to kill everybody on the top floor. Has already killed a couple who tried to get down in panic in ways that the fire department told them were not viable anymore. Is not a single instance failure, and having a mild engineering background, I know that big tragedies like that usually don't have one spot failure. This was done, this was done, this was done, this was done. Then the big thing happens, but the big thing is only able to be as tragic as it is because of those little things leading up to it. And the book did that. Next Monday, I'll be finished. Hopefully I'll finish The Glass Inferno as well, so I can talk about the 2 in contrast and how they fit into the movie The Towering Inferno that is based on both of them. So that's the week in reading for me. I hope your reading week was good. I hope you found my rambling about what I've read interesting and maybe even a little informative. As I said, I will link to as much as I can. The only thing I really want to have a link to is last year's Garbology Anthologies. It's out of print. Thank you for spending some time with me to listen to me talk about books. If you enjoyed it and you want to see what's next, please like and subscribe. Comment below. And here's to good reading.